I thought, why should things just be the way they are? We can be better humans. Hollywood, it was filled with all of these rules. You have to have long hair, so the men in Hollywood want to have sex with you. If they don't want to have sex with you, they're not going to cast you. And I didn't want to be homeless again, so I grew out my hair. I was mad that I had survived living as a street kid and not being raped there, and then it happened to me once I was in Fancyville. Sexual harassment, all that stuff is like the flaming spear tip that I thought we needed to have addressed. That book, Brave, is my fight to have my own voice for the first time. I knew it was going to be a hell of a battle in the public eye.
But it's not just about men that keep this in place.
No, it's women too.
What happens when you get people that push back and say, I'm part of the patriarchy, and that word can also mean good things?
Well, unfuck yourself is what I would say. What programming went into your head? Deprogram.
Talk to me about Me Too that happened afterwards.
And it was just time. Let's just think differently. It was like someone just pushed a button on a social reset.
Stop the violence! Stop the rape!
It feels like we have this sensitive social sphere out there in media that is ready to pick up and go after these figures. Now their careers get put on hold.
Right.
When we don't know what's happening, because that is a product of this Me Too movement to a certain extent.
I suppose it is collateral damage. It's important that we're having the conversation about it. It wasn't supposed to be easy. People need to be more brave in their own lives, at work. I'm here to live and tell the tale that you can fight the machine and still survive.
My name is Rose McGowan, and I am brave, and I am you.
They say that the human race is doomed, that we have lost touch with our true nature, that the media has corrupted us, and that the planet has no future. I disagree. I believe that humanity is full of hope, and that our salvation lies within each one of us. My name is Brian Rose, and my job is to listen, the oldest method of learning known to man. Each week I seek out individuals that are changing the world, people who are living and thinking in a different way. Their stories will challenge your beliefs, make you question your choices, and perhaps inspire you to change. I never planned on doing any of this, but now I can't stop. Join me on this mission and make humanity something we can all be proud of.
Rose McGowan is brave because she single-handedly exposed what was an open secret in Hollywood, and this was all of this alleged sexual abuse by Harvey Weinstein, a major mogul, and pretty much took down his entire company and many people associated with him. It was a difficult time, it was a stressful time, and it was one that we talked about when I got to go in depth with Rose and talk about the last year of her life and how she has changed so much. What Rose did created what we know now as the Me Too movement, and it was just a storm of many people stepping up and saying it's not okay to have this behavior. And I talked to Rose about that, and also talked to her about some of the collateral damage that is actually unfair from this movement. A lot of people being tried in the court of public opinion, some former guests on London Real on things that have never been proven in court. And she agreed that there was gonna be some collateral damage when things like this happen, and it could also be something that we had to have a conversation about. And I really appreciated Rose talking to me and really seeing her growth as a person and what it took to really expose this horrendous behavior and how we can have a conversation about this for men and women in the future and make sure this doesn't happen again. I know you're going to enjoy this conversation, and that's what we need to have in the future. A nuanced conversation about these things and go into detail and find out how people feel. This isn't about sound bites and tweets and accusations. This is about really finding out what happened, what's right and what's wrong. And I want this to be the start of this conversation here at London Real. And of course, you know, behind the scenes at London Real, we like to do a lot of other things as well, which means we like to educate. And we've got all sorts of things behind the scenes, whether it comes to broadcast or business or public speaking or just improving your lifestyle. And here's a bit more about what we do.
London Real doesn't stop when the conversation ends. You see, that's when we get started. Because everything begins with a thought, and then comes the action. The London Real Academy is our global transformation platform. Here we bring together thousands of students from over 75 countries. Whether you want to build a profitable business from your passion, or learn to speak to inspire, or broadcast yourself with your very own podcast, or accelerate your life to become a high-performance person, we have the online accountability course and personal mentoring program that will make your dream a reality. Join us, and we'll take your life to the next level, together. Our next accelerator course is starting soon.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Rose McGowan, the activist, author, and director. After an acting career in Hollywood that spanned 2 decades, you went public with allegations of abuse against Harvey Weinstein. This became central in exposing the systemic harassment in the entertainment industry that shook the world and led to the Me Too movement. Your book, Brave, chronicles your journey from childhood to Hollywood and your mission to reclaim your life and encourage people to question the power structures around them. Rose, welcome to London Real.
Thank you for having me.
It's great having you. I want to continue the conversation we were having earlier, which was cool. How is London treating you?
London has been very gentle with me.
Okay.
And I've been really grateful for that. I needed, the last couple of years were really, really, really hard. And I thought I needed a place where a cup of tea will take away some of your troubles.
You were just in Oxford yesterday.
Yeah.
How do people react to you here? You know, I mean, it must be like, you must be thinking, I wonder what the UK is going to be like. How does it feel? What do people say to you?
I don't know. People are they're pretty cool customers here. They're not, I mean, I get stopped about once or twice a day. Just a woman or a man who says thank you or says something really cool or shares their story with me. But it's not like people running after you down the streets. It's different. It's a different kind of fame. And I appreciate that.
Right. Different from the LA vibe.
Different from the LA vibe.
And different than New York?
Different than New York even. Yeah, New York, there's something about America that always feels, I love America, but it doesn't feel exactly like the safest place. And maybe it hasn't been the safest place for me. Mm-hmm. So it's probably just experience, but it's kind of a triggering place for me.
And this feels safer here?
Yes.
Yeah, it is safer.
I know they talk about knife crimes being on the uptick and all that, and that's terrible, but it almost sounds quaint when you compare it with mass shootings.
Yeah, I find London to be really user-friendly and safe, and if you can get past the weather...
I take the tube.
Yeah. Well,
I love it.
Tube's amazing, right?
Tube's amazing. Gets you where you want to go, like that. And it's much easier to navigate than New York subway, which I've still not mastered.
Yeah. And you're not far from me now, so...
No, we'll have to hang out.
Greenery, North London. You know, I was learning more about you, and I got a flashback to a point in my life in 1991 where I took a road trip from Los Angeles, where I was working as an aerospace engineer, to MIT, where I was going to school in Boston. It was a 7-day road trip. And I went with 2 of my buddies, funny enough, my fraternity brothers, in one of their Camaros, and I had the autobiography of Malcolm X. And I was in the back seat. And there was no internet back then or mobile phones. So I read that for 7 days.
Isn't it an incredible book?
I was captivated. And I would not only read it, and then I would tell the 2 guys what was happening in Malcolm's life. And I was really inspired by what he did. And he has this really well-known phrase, which is, by any means necessary.
Yes.
And I've been known to have some anger issues as a kid. And I remember you saying that you kind of respected Malcolm because he taught you that anger got things done. Is that a fair enough?
That's a completely fair assessment. And I think enough accolades cannot be heaped upon, you know, his shoulders or his feet. Malcolm X, his book, I reread it because I read it when I was 11, and I reread the autobiography a few months ago, actually.
Really?
And I was like, hello, friend. And it's just this beacon, this light, you know, this I think the world would be so different had he lived, don't you?
Yes. Yes.
I think the world would be a really different place. And I think there's also something that, you know, very much for his time, like black men were not supposed to show anger. They were supposed to be deferential. And women are generally supposed to be deferential and not show anger. And I don't really believe in that. I think we can be whatever we want to at any moment we want to be, you know, whatever we are. And I don't see why prescribed societal thought should dictate how we behave. And I don't think anything's ever been solved by sitting and thinking about it. Sometimes action needs to be taken. It doesn't make it fun. Being in the anger spot doesn't make it pleasant. It's not good for one's health. I mean, look what happened to Malcolm X, for God's sakes. But it does propel things.
It gets things done. And it's necessary in all of our lives.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in that state of anger, but you need to be able to go there, not judge yourself for it, but allow it to happen and flow.
Exactly. And that was, when I wrote Brave, I was angry, but I was more interested in deprogramming a system that had done its damnedest to program me. And if it was programming me, who has a strong mind, what's it doing to other people?
And that's kind of what you like to talk about, is question the system, question what we're all doing, why we're doing it. You've talked about this like tapestry of your own, and pulling out and looking, what are the synthetic fibers and what are the natural fibers, and who are you and who is the program that's being run on you?
Exactly. I feel it's just incumbent upon us. You know, we were talking earlier about how we look, you know, like, is how you look, are you wearing a suit because you want to, or because you're supposed to, because you're going to a bank today? You know, whatever it is it your choice? If it's your choice, cool. Just make sure it's your choice. And I think people don't check in with themselves often enough. And really, one of the things I do is I make a list. I'll make a list of like beliefs and then subheadings, you know, under that, like a belief system, and try to ferret out whether the belief is mine or whether it's been something that's been implanted into me. And if it's been implanted in me, then I can get rid of it.
And you have two things that I think are in your benefit from maybe telling this whole story. One is that you weren't born in America, or you weren't born in LA. And the second one is you had a very kind of unique childhood.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could share that, because I think it helps to understand your perspectives.
I grew up in a really unique way, I think, just for the world, not outside of America, but I grew up in another country. I grew up in Italy, but I wasn't with Italians per se. I was in a multinational cult called Children of God, and my father ran the Italian chapter. And we grew up, I was born into it, so there was a very different set of rules. I don't know what was happening in the rest of the world. I have no idea. I don't know what TV shows were on. I don't know what music people were listening to. And I also didn't know what I looked like, because there was very little importance placed on what we looked like. We were supposed to be raised as superminds. And my parents and all of the other parents fought for that, so we had no mirrors. And for the first 10 years, what that gives you is this great freedom to not be a boy or a girl. So imagine getting to 10 years old and you don't subscribe to anything that tells you what you are, other than your own internal feelings. And that, I think, has put me fundamentally at odds with a lot of society, or at least, you know, like when I butt heads with it. And it also, I think, gives me kind of a superpower. I got a grace period, that kind of indoctrination that so many people get, where they have to then unthink and deprogram themselves, you know, as they go along. I didn't get that programming. They tried to program me with other stuff. That didn't really work either. But
you always said you were kind of immune to that. How can you really be immune when you're 1, 2, 3 years old? I
was a strange child. I just came out.
You don't say.
You don't say. I would watch what they were doing, the cult members, and it just wasn't matching up with what they were saying. And I just thought, well, if I say I believe in your God, this is just to make you feel better. Why would I want to make you feel better? If I have to lie to make you feel better, then I'm making myself feel bad. So it just struck me as something of a devil's bargain. And so I was never able to tell people what they wanted to hear. Just it would have probably made my life, I guess, easier in the short term. But I think when you keep giving that part of yourself away, that is just to make other people feel better in the short term instead of doing what's right, you lose yourself.
So it did give you that bubble, though, to where you could kind of evolve in some kind of a weird natural way, without all these kind of societal stereotypes.
Exactly. It's like growing up in a forest and then being thrown out to America.
Right. So that happened next.
Ah.
So how old were you when you went to America? 10. So boom, you go to America.
A Navy base.
Ooh, Navy base. Where was that again?
In Washington State.
Okay.
Yeah, that was some, they changed my name from Rosa to Rose the first day of school. And they put my hand on my chest and they made me lead the class in the Pledge of Allegiance, which I refused to do. And the first words that I said in English, I heard the teachers behind me say, "We're going to get the commie out of her." And I said, "Italians were fascists."
That's quite an introduction. ...
dummy.
Right. Yeah, the Pledge of Allegiance can be a little heavy if you really think
and
about it.
I had no idea what they were talking
Right.
about. I was like, and they had my hand. They were just like forcing it on my chest while they all repeated it. And nationalism is something that escapes me entirely. I have no... I'm not nationalistic in the least. I don't feel like I have a home, and I don't feel a great kinship to any land, which kind of makes me sad, but in a lot of ways, I think it frees me as well.
So you walked away from this one cult, and then you've kind of gone into America.
Which is a cult.
Tell me more about that.
Fox News recently, they're like, Rose McGowan says America was worse than the cult she was in. I'm like, yes, it was. It was harrowing. America was not to be challenged. America did not like to be challenged, and everybody around me wanted things to be done in a very specific way, and I couldn't. It seemed, I say in my book, "Dear America, why is your cheese orange? Why is American cheese," that's the actual name of it, "a congealed blob, a fluorescent orange, in a plastic wrapping? Does this not say a lot about you?"
That's a good question. And so you went from Children of God cults into America, and you're looking at this like, wait a second, and
everyone was telling me how weird it was how I grew up, and I was like, no, it's really weird how you live.
Okay. Nationalism, the way schools were, your education was really different. And
they called me freak every day. They would throw things at me when I'd walk home, and that went on for a number of years, and I was just so bored with it. And "You're the ugliest thing I ever seen." And I would say, "You saw me, you did not see me."
And then you get to Hollywood, which is another kind of cult.
It is. It took me a while to really figure that one out. But it's interesting, they say that there's like in the 70 percentile something that if you've been in one cult, you'll likely find yourself in another. And I found that statistic really interesting, and it was borne out to be true for me.
So even though you're hyper aware, something's still pulling you to these different places. Why? How do you get your head around that? Is that a little scary?
It's meta. Yeah, it's big. It is a little scary. It's also, when you're used to really small but intense power structures, it seems there's a familiarity to that. And I think that's what kind of, I didn't go there trying to be famous. I was discovered. So I was never like, I need to be an actor. I have this hole in my chest that's only going to be filled with fame. Not saying that's what actors want, but there's the LA component of that, which does, you know what I mean? You're from there.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in LA.
There is a lot of that in
right.
LA.
But you were bouncing around, homeless, having a pretty crazy time, and boom, you got discovered on the street.
Yeah.
Right after, I think.
My boyfriend had just died.
Right.
Yeah, he had just been killed. That sucked.
And you're having an emotional moment on the street.
And this woman, "Do you want to be an actress?" And I'm crying. And I just thought, what ghastly people are these? And then she knew the person I was standing with, and so they kept approaching and kept calling. And 2 weeks later, I was starring in a movie.
How old were you?
17.
And what is Hollywood like when you're a teenager? What is that whole experience like? It's also maybe different now, so back then.
I don't know. I did that, and then I went away for a bit, and then I went back and did another movie, and then by 19, you could say I was really in it. What is Hollywood like? It was filled with all of these rules that were never written down anywhere, but everyone knew the rules, and everyone passed these rules on to you. Female agents were big in my life, and they had definitely a hand in telling me the rules that I had to abide by, such as, you have to have long hair, so the men in Hollywood want to have sex with you. If they don't want to have sex with you, they're not going to cast you. And they said it in more aggressive terms. And I guess I figured they knew, and I didn't want to be homeless again, so I grew out my hair. And that kind of led to the start of this external life. It was like my internal and my external self were so wildly divergent, but stuck together. And it was almost like doing deep undercover work as a famous woman. It was really weird. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I always knew it wasn't going to be the big deal in my life.
It wasn't going to be the big deal. So you're always kind of playing a part as a person that plays a part.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. And you're now getting kind of really deep into this, well, you've called it a patriarchy in LA. And I was wondering if you could talk a little more about that, because you talk about it in the book, and you have a great stat about the Directors Guild. But it's not just about men that keep this in place.
No, it's women too. It's not, the patriarchy takes all of us. It's not like, oh, there's 49% of the population men, and they're ruling everything, and we're just here like, no, women actively support this power structure. And they actively support a power structure that doesn't support them, which is, by definition, a cult. And Hollywood, it's almost like biblical. It goes back to like the wizened old man, like on his throne, like going like this. And whenever these kind of edicts are handed down, oh, you have to do this or the studio will be really unhappy with you. Oh, you have to do this magazine cover where you're wearing nothing but an ammo belt, or the studio will be really unhappy with you. Studio will be really unhappy with you. And that's like the God voice talking to you. And you can really substitute one for the other. It's rather chilling, I think.
And it's like 96% of the Directors Guild are men.
Yeah, 96% in the DGA, the Directors Guild of America, are men, and that statistic hasn't changed since 1946. So it's just a really narrow view, and it's primarily white male, and that's just doesn't reflect what I see on the streets. And there's nothing wrong with white men, but we don't only want to have their viewpoint.
What happens when you get people that push back and say, yeah, I am a white male and I'm part of a patriarchy, and that word can also mean good things? Are
you allowed to curse here?
Yes.
Well, unfuck yourself is what I would say.
What does that mean?
Unfuck yourself, deprogram. Go through your mind. And I'm really honestly not interested in men or women or the differences between. I'm really interested in humans. And I think if we can see each other as human before we see each other as a gender, and see ourselves as human before we see each other. I mean, I see myself as human before I see myself as a woman. Like whenever anybody says woman to me, I'm like, what? Oh, okay. Like it doesn't, and maybe that's just because of how I was brought up. I'm not sure. Maybe it clicks in. Maybe it's more of an easy alliance with most people. But with me, it's always been this uneasy like label that I've had put on me that I never really liked. And it comes with so much weight and history. You say the word men, it comes with all the weight and history of that word. Same with women and the weight and history of that word. And I really think if we figure out that we're human before we're anything else, we could really do some really amazing stuff together.
Okay. And if you use a word like patriarchy and say that that's male dominated, is that not playing part of that game of a gender identifying?
It is. It's shorthand. I have no other language available to me right now.
Okay. Dominant power structure.
It's really the power structure.
Okay,
it's the dominant power structure. And it's been given because of Christianity and Islam and all these things. It's been given, fundamentally, it's been a man's purview in that world. And so the power structure has this kind of ghostly specter of a man hanging over it, right? Even though, as we all know, that's an illusion. It's a hard one to break down, but I think it's something necessary to break down.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you want to have that conversation and get it in people's minds and talk about this. Okay.
It's a lot broader than Me Too. It's a lot... My interests lie in just unfucking minds. Like, I watch people get programmed, and then I was in different cults where the programming was so extreme, and it's something that's done without thinking. It's something that's done, we're just going to put this on TV, and everyone thinks Hollywood stays localized, but it goes out to the world. You know, my quibble isn't with Hollywood, it's just the messaging system. And my quibble is broader than that. I like that word, quibble.
Quibble.
It's a good word.
Why do you use that word?
I don't know, it just came out, but it sounded very British to me. Quibble.
And so if you had to kind of fast forward to 2015 when you decided to write this book, well, how would you fast forward to that date? I mean, career in Hollywood, you know, or do we want to just fast forward and you can tell me why you really decided to write this book?
I had a friend who recommended I wait till I was 80, and I thought, dear God, my book would be so long at that point. I can't wait till I'm 80. But there was a woman on the plane when I came to America, and she told me I should write a book. She was sitting next to me, and I was telling her my story. And I told her she didn't know the half of it. And I've always kind of filmed things for posterity, you know, in my head. I talk in the book about finding a camera when I was really young. So as we're having this conversation now, part of me is across the room filming this just to file it away for later, and I'll study it and dissect it, roll it around. And it's something that I do, and I think that helped me when embarking on writing a book, to really have really solid memories and really very cinematic memories in a weird way. Like cinema and my brain kind of are so intermingled, I can't kind of separate them.
Okay. And it was a really difficult, painful process.
It was a beast.
You told me earlier, you described it. How did you describe it earlier?
I said it was like giving birth to a spiky birth canal. It was like,
It took 3 years.
It took 3 years to write, and I love words, and words mean so much to me, and reading is what saved me at many points in my life, and I talk about that in my book too. It's just how reading was something that was such a fundamental tool for survival, and also just the beauty of words and the impact of language. So I crafted my book very carefully, but the memories that you call up, and then the ghosts are sitting around with you, you know, you're talking about your dad, and it's not like, okay, I'm shutting my laptop and going to dinner. It's not like your ghost of a dad isn't sitting there at dinner going, you know, with you. And I didn't visit my father's grave for the 3 years I was writing the book. I was too angry with him. I was too angry with him. But once it came out, it was cool. We were good. I could go visit.
Why were you angry?
It was just rehashing a lot of, it was just, you know, I talk in there, like at one point I plotted to kill him.
Like for reals?
For reals.
Like when you were writing it or when you were a kid?
Oh, when I was a kid.
Yeah, okay.
And I used to sneak out and leave the door wide open in hopes that someone would come in and kill him for me.
You're not happy about the cults moving, his parenting, all of that stuff?
He was bipolar, unmedicated, and he was a wild human. He was a really unique, magical unicorn of a being, but also could be at times very abusive. And there was a point where the dark side eclipsed the light, and that was really difficult. He was an incredible artist. His work just was so psychedelic, and his mind, the way he saw things, fascinated me endlessly. A really, truly stellar human being, but I think what kept him from being a free human was that he was really locked in this role of being what a man was, that he couldn't ask for help, that he couldn't do these things, and it seemed like he was just trapped in this kind of suit that he never wore. It was a suit not of his making, but he still wore the mantle of the suit, and he couldn't get out of it. He couldn't express himself. He couldn't say, I've messed up, or I need help with this. He could not do that. And I think that to me is the patriarchy. That's what I talk about when I talk about it. It's more like the invisible suit they stick you in, you know, how you get stolen as a man so young and told what you're supposed to be and how you're supposed to behave. It's so rigid, and it doesn't leave a lot of freedom for developing your creativity and who you are. And what if you're just a different kind of unique person? Who knows? You know, I just wish we had more of a reprieve.
Yeah, I have 2 young boys. They're 1 and 2 right now.
Wow.
So I get to watch this, and I have a 14-year-old stepdaughter. So I'm watching this.
Wow,
and
what
thinking,
an interesting...
Yeah. So, and I grew up with her for about 8 years, so I got to see her kind of turn into a woman and be a big part of her life. And now I'm looking at these boys, and I'm just like, man, like there's a lot of things I definitely don't want to do. I don't want to tell them to be a man, you know.
Right.
But I want them to see.
But actually take pride in being a man too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a conundrum.
It's a line you have to walk.
It's a really fine line.
And again, and then they also got the media on this side. So the latest Pixar movie is programming all sorts of behaviors and relationships between genders in the background, right?
Yeah, it is.
And there's only so much I can do. I mean, I can do a lot, but there's that going on too.
Right.
And they're in London. So, I mean, I've got my work set out, but I'm thinking about this right now, Rose, because I'm like, wow, because I want them to be able to be creative and expressive and all that, and everything they want. And I also want them to be able to, I don't know, defend themselves and do jujitsu and then also do art and not feel like one is different than the other.
Right.
So
I think everything is an art form. You know, I talk to a lot of people who say, and it's interesting, you'll meet people, this happened a lot in LA actually, and they would say, oh, I'm not on the creative side. They would wave their hands like it's something that was horrible that might be catching. And I would think, well, how very sad for you. Because if I was an accountant, I would be the most creative accountant out there. If I was a lawyer, I'd be a creative lawyer. I think creativity can go with us, whether I think art is jujitsu. I think art isn't necessarily just painting or photography or what we ascribe it to be. I think it's freedom of mind. And I think jujitsu, anything, art can be in the beauty of that motion, right?
Yeah. I think Andy Warhol said, you know, business is the most beautiful art.
Ha ha ha.
Yeah, of course he would say that.
He would say that.
But no, I agree with you. I hate it when people say I'm not an artist, I'm not creative, because it's like, well...
It's so narrow.
Yeah.
Why would you say that about yourself?
Yeah. It's a weird programming.
It's a total programming.
Yeah. And I mean, I grew up in that because I was the kind of the science tech geek, and I was like, oh, I'm choosing science over
My
humanities.
sister is also an aeronautical engineer.
Okay.
She's a material science engineer.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, I went to MIT, and there's literally no English department, no humanities department. There's really very little, you know.
Yeah, I think it should be
creativity.
STEAM, not STEM.
STEAM.
What, the science, technology, English, and math. But it should be art should be in there too.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. So anyways, I'm work in progress raising these boys. Did you always know that in this book you would be talking about what happened in '97 with Harvey in that hotel? Was this always going to be there, and did that make the writing of this heavier?
Yes, it did. It's not the thrust of the book. It's just another story in the book, but it's an important story, and it's kind of the crescendo in some ways. And again, it's the book isn't about that. It's really about so much more, but that is an unfortunate thing that happened in my life, and it's something that made me very angry. Rightfully so.
And you had been holding that, not inside, but you had been holding
I've been holding that flame for a long time.
For 18 years,
yeah.
20 years. And you had talked about it, but you hadn't put it in this kind of, I don't know, I was going to say weaponized form, but, you know, in a I don't know, in a powerful form?
In a powerful form.
Was it the book? Was it the timing? What was it?
It was, I think it was all of it, and I think Donald Trump really helped. You know.
Explain that.
Well, I think he showed to the good liberals who thought everything had been taken care of, and sexism is just this nuisance thing that we hear about now and then, and racism is just this thing, oh, we hear about it from that crowd. It was the good guys on the left. I mean, didn't Malcolm X say, give him a southern white racist over a northern white liberal any day?
Yeah, he did say that.
Because he would know who his enemy was.
And so Trump reminded us that we actually still have a problem.
That this is what this is. And this is the face of what this looks like. And this is how it behaves. And this is what it talks like. And this is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. This is what it feels like. Yeah, he helped a lot. And that's why I have a weird love for him.
Can you tell more about that love of him?
It's a strange position to be in, certainly, to be like, I love Donald Trump. It's funny to me because it's so absurd, but here we are, he's the president. I just think he does things sometimes where I'm like, you have to admire his chutzpah. You're like, wow, what are you?
I think you said he's like honest about all the things he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But dishonest about the things he should be.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's obvious.
He just makes it really plainly obvious what it is, what the it of whatever it is. Like all those guys have been doing the same stuff he's been doing all along. All the other presidents, you know, he's just the one that he's like, hey, doing this. And people are like, I'm like, did you not know that was happening already?
Right.
I mean, he might be pushing it harder and doubling down on it, but it's all stuff, you know, the drones with Obama, the children in cages, that was during Obama, like, and I'm not pro-Democrat nor am I pro-Republican. I'm pretty much against all of it. But in terms of showing us how to grow, I think Donald Trump's done a hell of a job.
I had a guy named Simon Sinek in here who's got a great concept called Start With Why, and he said, Trump is a reflection of us. He's a reflection of America or of the world, of what we really are. Do you believe that?
I think are and aren't. I think he really makes people assess what their core values are, and their core values might be shitty values, at least to me, but I think there's something, I agree with him, but I think he's also what you're not. And I think never has there been a public figure that's made it so easy to use him as a mirror for yourself and describe what you are and aren't by just simply placing his cardboard cutout in front of you and staring at it. You know, I think it's a really interesting mirror to look in.
And that's why you love him.
And that's why I love him.
That makes total sense, Rose.
Thank you.
It does. To the book, it was the right time, Trump. You obviously had time to think about it, to really spend time writing this book. But 10 years ago, would this have not...
It wasn't time.
It wasn't time.
It wasn't time for me personally in my life, and it wasn't time culturally. Society wasn't primed yet. It was kind of like I was like, come on, wake up, wake up. And also social media wasn't in place yet. Like there were a lot of things that just had to naturally evolve before it could happen.
Did you know this was going to drop like a bomb?
Yes.
When you started writing it?
Yes.
Okay.
There was $1 million bounty on my book.
How does that happen? How does someone know you're writing a book?
Well, he knew everything, and he hired a company called Black Cube, he being Weinstein, to come after me, and they stole 125 pages of it before it was published. So to have a rapist in your head that's a bad acid trip.
Yeah. And so he was always had you in his sights
always.
Because he knew you were going to be a problem.
Yes, because I never signed a non-disclosure agreement.
And that was a conscious decision you made?
Yes, it was a conscious decision I made.
So you settled with him, $100,000, no NDA, and at the time, that was something you were like, it seemed like a lot of money.
Yeah, well, I tried to buy a billboard that said Harvey Weinstein is a rapist, but Gannett Outdoors wouldn't sell it to me. Shocking, but true. I thought I was going to get one. I wanted to replace the sign on Sunset Boulevard where the Marlboro Man always had his ad by the Chateau Marmont. I thought that would be a good place for a billboard.
It is a good place for a billboard.
It is a good place for a billboard.
But you couldn't do that.
I couldn't do that, so I
therapy.
donated the money and I got some therapy.
Okay, but never signed that NDA.
Never signed an NDA.
And in the back of your mind, this was always going to be something you would talk about.
Yes.
And he knew that.
He knew that.
Okay. So in the meantime, he's making it very difficult for you to work in Hollywood.
Very difficult. I got stuck on a TV show because I couldn't get a job in film. Film and TV weren't as crossed over as they are now. And it was, a lot of people were very confused by my move into TV. And for me, it was just purely a move to keep food on the table. You know, because once you get famous and then you get blacklisted, what do you do? What's your option?
Right.
To make a living, where are you going to go for a job? It makes it extremely difficult.
And a few directors around the way kind of stuck their neck out, is that right to say, about like Rodriguez, where he put you in the film knowing that there was beef between you and Harvey, or?
No, because then he sold the movie to him to distribute.
Right. And then said he didn't. Okay.
Yeah, but he did.
And then said he didn't think Harvey did distribute it because of that. Who knows, right? Yeah. Okay. So you're right.
I keep wanting to say things in Yiddish. I'm like, it's a bunch of mishigas. I don't know. Today's a Yiddish day. Okay. I love the Yiddish language.
Okay. You speak Yiddish?
No, I just speak Yiddish.
Okay, sounds good. So you're writing this. They know you're writing it. They're trying to stop it. Yeah. They got like ex-Mossad agents trying to get it away.
Infiltrating my life, like pretending to be sexual assault survivors. And becoming close with me to steal the book and to find out my designs and my plans. And then, so I called the New York Times. I called this woman at a group called Ultraviolet, actually, which is like a feminist action pack. And I said, I need help. And they put me in touch with Jodi Kantor from the New York Times. And I told her the story is bigger than you can imagine. It's bigger than you can ever know. And then I had to buy time. So for the last year that I was writing the book, I was in fake negotiations with the monster, as I call him in the book, to get the book done, but also to give it enough time to get these New York Times articles written, because they needed to come out before my book.
Right. What negotiations were you with the monster?
$1 million.
Oh, like settlements?
Settlements.
Okay.
Which I was never going to do.
But it kept them at bay and allowed you to write.
It kept it at bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to understand this whole giving birth analogy.
Yeah.
So you're not only writing a book, which can be a pretty lonely process, but you are juggling...
massive stress. I'm juggling some of the most formidable people, and his lawyer is Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton's lawyer, David Boyce. And that's the lawyer who was coming for me behind the scenes. He's a big baddie. He hired Black Cube. It's all completely insane, of course, but it's really just that book, Brave, is my fight to have my own voice for the first time. And it's fitting that it was such a fight even just to get the book out.
Did the woman at the New York Times right away get it, or did she have to spend a little time looking into it?
Oh, she got it, but she had to, but because the story was so big and had grown, it was one of those, it was like everybody knew, but nobody was willing to go on the record kind of thing. And so I gave them documents and just set it up. And then I called in Ronan Farrow and kind of got him at war with, at the time he was with NBC. And I got NBC into a war for the story with the New York Times because I knew one of them would fall.
And without both, it might not have gotten done.
Exactly.
Do you think it might not have?
It wouldn't have.
Really?
I don't believe it would have if it was just one.
Why?
Because he and his cronies, they exert such powerful influence. His protection came from the Democratic Party.
Because he was a big fundraiser there and knew a lot of people. Even the New York Times, they could have.
Could have.
Wow.
Because they could have done the story any time in the past. They all knew. Maybe not to the levels of the depravity, most people didn't know that, but certainly the stories had been out there for a long time, yeah.
October 2017, this drops. What's that month of your life like?
Yeah, that month was extra.
You have good adjectives, Rose. Extra.
It was a little bit extra. It was, I met my partner that I'm with now the night before the New York Times story broke. And I had just gotten word that the story was coming out the next day. And my friend brought Rain, my partner, to my house, and I was just not fit. It wasn't like trying to make a love connection. It was just like, hello, human being. And I had just gotten off the phone and gotten the news, and I said, you don't know this, but the whole world is going to change tomorrow. She's like, okay, crazy lady. And I'm like, no, the world's actually going to change tomorrow. You'll see, watch.